Hello ladies and gentlemen and everyone watching. Today we're going to be reviewing a film called Junkhead, a stop-motion horror masterpiece, written, directed, and starring Takehide Hori. A quick synopsis of the film. It's placed in the future, where humanity can't reproduce. Yet there is a sign of hope in an underground city, where unnatural humanoid creatures still have the ability to reproduce. And our main protagonist goes on a little expedition throughout that underworld hellscape to try to find a solution for the rest of the world, all while making friends along the way. The movie is mainly focused on the stop-motion beauty of it. However, the story involved is pretty damn good, and I think some of the themes inside of it can be inferred many different ways. Another point I want to make before we jump into the full review is that in this world, it's not just reproduction that's seemingly lost, it's also humanity, as there isn't any idea of friendship, love, unity, or really any joy. You know, the things that make life for us. Those things separate us from the working life of just being like a normal robot and going to your job every day and coming back and doing nothing. Which, if you aren't in your 20s yet, that's what seemingly this is about, and it's so much fun. Anyway, it is a nihilistic world, and the creatures within it are either dead, robots, or like not all the way alive. Again, no humanity or feelings, so how alive is that? Alright, I think that's a good enough preview of it. At the end of the review, I'm going to talk about some outside context, like the budget, reception, all of that fun jazz. But without further ado, grab a snack, and let's set fire to an orphanage, baby. That means we're going to start. The film starts out with a little robotic fella getting into a pod to be released down into the depths of this world. Before our little robotic fella hits the ground, we cut to a different scene. It's two human-looking guys, but remember, there's barely any humans or anything that resembles a human in this movie. And these guys are taking some sort of shot at what seems to be a tree monster. And after a couple of attempts that don't work, a rocket launcher does the job. Which usually is how that goes. We watch the tree creature die and then slowly become a giant tree. Like not a living one, but like an actual well, trees are living, you fucking idiot. He becomes a giant tree, and the two guys who shot down the creature go over to it and start burning it. This is completely out of context, but it will make sense at the end of the movie. But also, it does tie into our little robotic guy that we saw at the start, because these weird mummy-looking guys start taking shots at the guy that we saw at the beginning. And they manage to hit his pod. And then the movie cuts to rubble, and that's when we get introduced to some of the best characters in the movie. Now, I'm going to call them the Three Stooges. We get their names later on. However, I think it is a point to not name them. Even though I did name them, but the Three Stooges find the robot's remains, and they go take his parts to the so-called doctor. And this is when we get introduced to another staple about Junkhead. And that's the soundtrack. We watch as the doctor begin to work on... Can y'all quit messing around? The doctor cracks the helmet, only to reveal what seems to be a little head, or like a partial face. However, what the doctor says it is the ego of a human. And there's a bit of an exposition dump right here that reveals that there are different layers into this world. And that this little robotic guy that we saw at the start came from some top layer. I mean, we saw him go down, so obviously. But within each of these levels in this world, it's a different sort of class. However, in every single level, it's working people. Some of them do get breaks, but most of them don't. It's just work, and work. So our main guy comes from the top level. And although he is better off than these guys right now that we're watching, as well as the guys we saw shoot at the tree monster, he still has to work every day. But also, within those levels, there's conflict everywhere. Hence why we saw those mummy guys try to shoot down our little robotic guy. That's not too important for right now, but it is important context for the world. With all that being said, the doctor fixes up the little guy that we watch. And now he's this little robotic mannequin cute fella. Now, instead of referring him to the fella or the main guy or the protagonist, I'm just going to tell you his name right now, even though we don't learn his name until later on in the movie. His name is Junkers. However, I'm going to call him Junkie Boy. The doctor sends Junkie Boy, as well as the Three Stooges, out to collect some scrap parts. Or what the Three Stooges call, junk. This part mainly shows us what the Three Stooges' life is like. And it literally just consists of collecting trash in this weird labyrinth area with creepy worms, which you'll see in a second. And that's it. That's their whole existence, just working. But in this weird labyrinth, Junkie Boy loses the Three Stooges, which is not ideal for either party. But when they're separated is when we finally get introduced to some scary imagery. These creepy little dick worms were featured earlier, but here we get a really good look at the design of them. I personally really like the centipede penis look that Takehide Hori was going for. Maybe a little less penis, but like whoever said that, right? But hey, I can't complain. Give me all that dick. Sorry. The creepy worm creature begins to chase Junkhead all throughout the maze of the concrete hallways. And Junkie Boy is only saved by the Three Stooges. I failed to mention that the Three Stooges think that Junkhead is God. Like, they straight up believe that this is God, and they don't really hinder off that belief throughout the whole movie. This isn't important for the themes going on into the movie, but it's also used as comedic relief. And it really works in my opinion. Some of my favorite scenes were just watching the Three Stooges interact with everyone in the world, including Junkhead. And that includes their little conversations about what life really means. And with all that being said, God is dead. I guess that's the end of the video. That little worm incident leads to Junkhead having some weird flashbacks, and it shows us his old life. This is what I mentioned earlier about how he lived up on the higher floors. Now this scene personally really scares me because these weird mannequin looking things, I don't like mannequins. Ugh. And it also doesn't go too hard in trying to be scary, it's just off by just enough. Regardless, we get to see the origin of Junkhead unfold in front of our eyes. And it shows that Junkhead is worried about bills, and that he thinks he's gonna sign up for some sort of expedition that's gonna pay him a good amount of money. He says this to a lady friend who he imagines... Nah? Which hey, we all daydream sometimes, some more than others.
Oh man. The bullshit piled up so fast in Vietnam we needed wings to stand by.
But this shows us that Junkhead was in pursuit of money, one for like bills and just materialistic things, but also in the pursuit of money for lust. And that's when the flashback ends and Junkhead comes back a little discombobulated. And by that, I mean he thinks the Three Stooges are enemies, because the expedition that he was set to go on that's going to pay him some big money, he was supposed to murder and kill things down in these lower levels. Now, the Three Stooges just think that he's broken. Something broke within God, and that's not a good thing. However, they can fix it. The doctor's there. Yet, we're about to see one of the best fight scenes in all of cinema. Are you ready? Yeah, so the Three Stooges take him back to the doctor. And as they're taking Junkhead back, we see that some of the worms are actually friendly. Like the Three Stooges go up and like treat one as like a dog or some sort of pet. Also, I need to point out that Junkhead's very focused on genitalia. And that makes sense because the movie, like his whole goal is to find reproduction. But Junkhead like just stares at this worm guy's penis. It's like, dude, the eyes aren't there, man. Like when creepy dudes are like staring at ladies and not at their eyes, it's pretty obvious because it's like that. Junkhead's just doing this. Reminds me of the local priest we had when I was a kid. Anyway, the priest's wee-wee give Junkhead not the priest, the worm's wee-wee give Junkhead flashbacks. And it's more exposition about his mission. And it makes Junkhead just think he's in hard enemy territory. Like you're playing zombies in Halo Reach and you're the last survivor.
It's remaining. Kill quantity. Kilimanjaro.
Now that's not based on experience, because his experience so far is, well, he's actually been saved by these lower level creatures. Granted, one of them shot him down, but hey, we don't think about that, right? And then the Three Stooges treat him like a god. Regardless, he's been told to think this way, so he's terrified. And within that fear, we see Junkhead try to run away again. And more of the amazing soundtrack ensues. We also get to see that Junkhead also learns as a being. He's not a dumb idiot with amnesia like my grandpa. No, he's confronted face to face with some worm creatures. And instead of just trying to run right away, he tries to be friendly and pet one of them. In reference to what the Three Stooges did earlier. But... it didn't work. In this chase, we get introduced to the real gore in the movie, as the worms that were chasing Junkhead get eaten by other worms. So not only do we get to see gore, but we also get to know that, hey, there's no really alliance here. It's eat or be eaten. Or in Junkhead's case, just run like hell. Oh, but that also doesn't work because they dismember our little boy.
Look how they mess with my boy.
Well, back to square one. I really enjoy the hopeless atmosphere that the movie produces. Not only the atmosphere and the setting, but also Junkie Boy constantly gets beaten down over and over and over again throughout the movie. There's barely any wins, if you can call them wins at all. And quite literally, every single turn in life so far for Junkhead has led to some sort of problem. The dismembered parts of Junkie Boy are picked up by another traveler, and we get to see even more weird creatures that are in this world. Still not quite human-like, but I mean, we're getting closer. There's boobies. These red creatures are ladies, and these ladies are just inherently better at work in this world, which work is everything, so they're just better at everything in this world. And they boss around all the other creatures who are men. However, they leave them on a good little vacation and trust them, which is not a good idea. The traveler that grabbed Junkie Boy's head accidentally left some kids to play with it, but luckily he gets the head back. Junkhead is still seen as literally junk, and the new traveler who found him is going to create a new body for him out of more junk. Alright, are you guys seeing why it's named Junkhead now? Can you kids fuck off? Now, Junkhead's new look is a little bit more robotic, and he also can't talk anymore. Yet Takehide Hori still made it to where Junkhead's emotions are still visibly illustrated, and you know exactly how he's feeling and what emotion he's giving off, all with a robotic face and no talking. That is a hard thing to do. In this new level, Junkhead's just gonna be another worker. Like, they get him to start sweeping. I hated sweeping so much, dude. Now I'm in a job that I definitely love. At the 38-minute mark of this movie is when we finally learn our main protagonist's name. He only gets called as Junkers in the movie, but I'm gonna call him Junkhead because I hear Junkers and I think of like the Jonkler, which is not a good thing.
Why so serious?
Junkhead gets sent on an elevator to go pick up his, Can you quit that, man? These parts that Junkhead are getting are kind of weird. They look like they're growing out of human parts being grown out of the wall. I've said it before, but these set pieces are so amazing. Not only can I admire how much work goes into all the stop motion and making every single thing move, but also it's just creepy and dystopian as hell, and I love it. It's so fun to look at all this imagery, but that gets interrupted because this little shithead over here who's gonna scam our boy in blue. He's gonna scam him and just treat him like shit, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm jumping the gun again, but he gets his comeuppance. Don't worry about it. This little weird-eyed freak. Alright, now I know I kind of just spoiled it, but do you trust this guy? Slowly but surely, this weird-eyed freak scams Junkhead out of those weird human body part finger things by saying, hey, we need one of those to pay the cheese tax for the elevator, even though the elevator guy does not give a shit. And he even sets up some like homeless people looking guys, and he's like, hey, we need more cheese tax for them. And he just pockets it. This weird freaky-eyed guy mainly uses Junkhead's innocence against him. Since Junkhead doesn't know how this world works and it's pretty much just like Philadelphia, just keep your eyes down and keep moving forward. And then you'll be perfectly fine. Just, well, it depends on the colors you wear. But then you'll be perfectly fine. But instead of a friend, Junkhead gets a scammer, which is very reminiscent in the real world because people are dude. I hate. You want to hear my thoughts about the government? Luckily, Junkhead's problems get solved. Jesus, fuck you. Oh wait, this guy was a douchebag. It doesn't matter. Not only is this an amazing use of the gore, but we also get introduced to a new worm-like creature that's instead of mixed with like a centipede, it's mixed with a spider and a centipede. Anyway, Junkhead grabs the remaining fingers off of the weird-eyed, well, he doesn't have eyes anymore, but the guy's body, and as he's walking away, I hate spiders so much. When he finally lands, he begins to explore this new weird space. And just look at the atmosphere. It's so good. I love this shot especially. I can't fully explain it, but it encompasses the idea of loneliness and dealing with this world all by yourself with such a nihilistic viewpoint. Not even nihilistic, but like a hopeless viewpoint, as in every day's the same cycle and nothing's gonna change. Even though in Junkhead's life so far, he's had nothing but change. Yet every single time he's changed, he's still forced to do the same thing, which is just work. I don't know if that makes sense, but who says what makes sense nowadays, right? The adventure carries on, and we finally see some resemblance of humanity, as Junkhead meets this Firekeeper, and they have a nice little conversation. And on top of all of that, in that conversation, the Fire Watcher tells Junkhead that he's so tired. So in return, Junkhead makes a little chair out of junk, and he gives it to the Fire Watcher so he can keep watch of the fire while also being able to sit. Literally the first act of humanity in the movie. I know that the Doctor and the other Traveler rebuilt Junkhead, however they did that to have some sort of slave or employee. Capitalism, baby. But Junkhead just simply made this chair just out of the kindness of... He doesn't have a heart, so I guess his ego. Also, this scene shows us that the Fire Watcher is extremely important to this world, as if he doesn't keep the fire going, then levels start to shut down. But after that glimpse of humanity, we get this. Ugh. I'm at the age where like my friends are having like babies and stuff, and then like they post it and they're like, oh, look at my cute baby. I'm looking at a baby. Then again, I think just babies are ugly looking because like they don't have teeth and they just shit themselves. Dude, I stopped doing that when I was like 12. Junkie Boy continues his little adventure. He's trying to find his way back when he encounters this fella in a red hood. We'll name him Jason. I'm pretty sure Jason's a girl, but there's nothing that confirms gender in this movie other than the big boob lady. I don't know what Jason is, but we're gonna call him Jason or Red Hood. Junkhead leaves a little gift for the Red Hood and his little buddy. Well, little as in tall buddy. And that gets the duo to follow Junkhead on his little adventure, giving Junkie Boy some unknown company. And when Junkhead finally returns, he has the food, which is what his errand was, just to go get some food for all the other work guys who got left to watch over this level of work. However, those fingers that he brought back were all stale, and his boss is not pleased. However, the Red Hood and his tall friend will still eat those. We see the friendship grow between the duo and Junkhead, specifically Junkhead and the Red Hood. And that's when the film jumps to Junkhead and a couple of his pals fighting off a huge worm creature. All throughout the movie, we've been seeing the worm creatures eat other worm creatures, as well as other beings. And during this fight, Junkhead luckily gets saved by the Red Hood. And when he tells his makers, well, these makers, they realize that they have a big problem at hand. This is when we get the Red Hood and the tall guy's backstory. They were raised by this guardian figure, who unfortunately passed on, only to leave the Red Hood guy and his taller brother, or sister, or whatever type of sibling exists in this world, to fend for themselves. This strengthens Junkhead's and the Red Hood's friendship. However, that quickly gets interrupted. That can't be good. The creators of the newer Junkhead, so not the Doctor that we saw earlier, but the creators of the new Junkhead sent Junkie Boy out to go find some hunters who are trained to deal with these worms. Now these hunters are built up to be these badass mercenaries who can absolutely destroy worms. Are you ready to see what Takehide Hori created for the badass creatures? Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. When this movie does comedy, it does it so well. Half the time it's just deadpan humor like this, and I find the humor where it's just like awkwardly looking at each other just really funny. But I can't tell you enough how much they built up these hunters to be some badasses. And then we see it's the Three Stooges again. Like the Three Stooges are some sort of heroes, or like they're in... But we and Junkhead know what the Three Stooges are actually like. I nicknamed them the Three Stooges for a reason. Not just because they're funny, but because they're pretty incompetent at times. Doesn't mean I don't love them. It's like that weird dog that pants really weird that's like... And you just keep him around because you feel bad if you like shot it. Now when Junkhead meets the Three Stooges don't realize it's Junkhead. But the Three Stooges, like, obviously wouldn't know it's Junkhead because the last time they saw Junkie Boy, besides dying, he didn't look like this. He looked like this. Also, the new creators of Junkie Boy don't even know that the Three Stooges knew about Junkhead in the first place. Like, the Three Stooges don't even know the name Junkers. You up to date? Cool. That mystery doesn't last that long, which I'm personally happy with because I'm not the biggest fan of when movies are like, oh, the characters in the movie don't know, but you know. It's like, man, I do know. That's not fun to me because now I'm pissed off that the characters aren't realizing it sooner. That's a random gripe. The Three Stooges find the old body of Junkie Boy and they ask the new creators, what the hell did you do with him? Junkhead is back, baby! What the hell, guys? Well, new body time, I guess. And on top of that, a better understanding of this world. Junkhead remembers his mission. It's to look for the ability to reproduce, which is like what set off the whole movie in the beginning. And with him remembering the reproduction mission, he gets told the story about the Tree of Life. And it begins to explain the beginning of the movie for us, the audience, as well as Junkhead. That tree creature that we saw at the beginning that just turned into a normal tree, that was a tree of life. But that tree creature was a product of uncared for fruit that came off of another tree. What I believe, and I don't have like evidence, but I'm pretty sure, is that the fruit is life. The tree itself is the reproduction. However, we were explained earlier with the Red Hood that the fruit begins to grow into like a weird little baby creature. And if it's not taken care of, it will become some sort of monster. Now, I don't know if that monster is always going to be that tree creature that we saw at the beginning of the film, or it could be one of the creatures we saw all throughout the movie. Regardless, that tree monster earlier was an uncared for fruit, which is why those mummy guys had to burn it down. But now Junkhead knows his mission and he has more context to go off of. And he sets after the Tree of Life because that's his best bet at reproduction. Also, before we continue, whenever Junkhead looked at the penises earlier and he had those weird flashbacks, first of all, those weren't penises, those were just tails of those worm creatures. Now, I'm not saying that those worm creatures don't look like penises, especially like uncircumcised ones. Is that too much? But he was just looking at the tails and just having weird flashbacks about sexuality because that's interlinked with reproduction. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but babies are made from sex.
Of our very lifeblood.
And Junkhead was thinking that a wee-wee caused reproduction, which is why he had the flashbacks. I think I'm over-explaining it, but it's fine. Everything's fine. I'm okay. You're okay. Before Junkhead finally goes off on his last little adventure, we see something weird when he interacts with the Red Hood and his tall friend. Junkhead is aware of who he once was. He's aware of his desires. You know that weird mannequin dude earlier that we saw? And how he was dancing with that lady? Although it's not what he imagined in his head, he asked the Red Hood fella to dance. Now, Junkhead is a lot like me with dancing. But it shows Junkhead is evolving with his humanity. Earlier we were shown that he was just kind out of just being kind by making that chair for the Fire Watcher. But now as he's dancing with the Red Hood, instead of dancing because he has money, they're dancing because they enjoy each other's company. But you know the saying, whenever it's going good, it has to go bad. That chair that Junkhead made for the Fire Watcher, that was not the greatest idea because the Fire Watcher fell asleep. But that's a problem for them and not Junkhead and the Three Stooges, as they continue on with their journey. This is where we get some of the most beautiful dialogue within the movie. I'm going to remind you that the Three Stooges see Junkhead as God, but now Junkhead has evolved more and has just experienced life. And he tries to explain to the Three Stooges that he's not God, although the Three Stooges are not going to hinder off of their belief. Yet they do have nice conversations about what life means and how the world works, all while traveling through beautiful scenery. When Junkhead and the Three Stooges finally arrive to face whatever atrocities are approaching, They notice that the Red Hood and the tall guy have been following them. Junkhead freaks out because he actually cares for someone now and he's worried about Red Hood. And unfortunately, that's when one of the worms gets a drop on them. Now, I know I mentioned earlier that the Three Stooges were seen as hunters and like these great heroes and killers and gladiators. Well, it's time to shine. See, they're pretty good at fighting, right? Y'all had this the whole fucking time? I can't explain to you the joy I had when I saw 3 claymated characters who were just goofy the entire movie turn into the ultimate fucking Batman and go ham on these worms. And you can just tell that Takehide Hori had so much fun directing the fight scenes with them. I can't tell you how good of a payoff this was for the movie, and all throughout you are not expecting any of these guys to really fight because they're runners. That's all what we've seen. They just run and they just deal with life. We never saw them punch at life. And with Junkhead, we've never seen him do this. Let's go, Junkie Boy! Junkhead only really gets his motivation after the fight with the Three Stooges and the worms bring the roof down, and we begin to learn the Three Stooges' names. One of them is named Alexander, and he's almost about to die, and that's when Junkie Boy goes Rambo, and they finally get that big worm creature down. But the roof collapses even more.
Dumbo, Memo, Tankaba.
No! We just lost Francis and Julian. The way that the movie so freely switches between comedy and then all of a sudden just pulls at your heartstrings for some characters that were just comedic relief the whole movie, it is so impressive. But dude, I was watching this movie in a Discord call with some of my friends and the call just got silent when they died. But then right after, we started opening beers and throwing axes at wood because we're real tough men. Unfortunately, that giant worm that was giving Junkhead all these problems, it's still alive. And Alexander's drugs begin to wear off. Junkhead is almost all out of options. And it seems that this might be where the story wraps up. However... And look at that! Alexander made it out! Junkie Boy achieved his goal of gaining the package of fertility. It's in this nice little case. Meanwhile, Alexander had to go back to the doctor. And their parting conversation is where the movie ends. Which is just so perfect. There's a lot of themes in the movie, especially surrounding the idea of losing humanity and the pursuit of something. For example, like the whole world lost humanity. They're all working, they all have some sort of job that they gotta do, and they're just simply focused on the job. They're not focused on anyone else and making sure anything else is going on in their lives. Like, hey, how you doing today? None of that. It's just work, 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 work. So much to the point that there are no human characters. Even the human-like characters aren't really human. And for me, the way I infer it is I think it's a warning about capitalism and how people get so focused on work that can produce some sort of money that they can see. And in that pursuit, they lose all sight of everything that makes us human. Like love, kindness, relationships. I also think it makes a point in the movie to show that the now and the living is what matters and not the afterlife. Because the Three Stooges always saw Junkie Boy as God. And right off the bat, we know, like movie context wise, we know that this isn't God. He was just some guy sent down who got shot down. But the Three Stooges don't know that. And all throughout the movie they talk about the afterlife, things like if there's a heaven or not. And I think they were so focused on that because that's where humanity could be. Because all the Three Stooges knew was just work. But all of a sudden this godlike creature comes along and they just spry up with hope and excitement. The doctor even said this isn't God. But the Three Stooges didn't care. They wanted to cling on to something. And later on, when Junkhead realizes that he's not God, he tries to smooth that conversation over with the Three Stooges. never fully convincing them, but also pointing out how they cared about one another. And at the end of the movie, Junkhead remarks that Julian and Francis were probably in heaven. Not only does that show humanity again from Junkhead, and how spreading it can make a difference, but I think how the movie ends right there shows that it doesn't matter what happens after death. The whole journey that we just watched was the meat on the bone. And I don't think the movie needed to show that Junkhead completed his mission, because the movie ends with Junkhead having the package. But we've seen what happens when Junkhead's told to go do an errand. Not the most reliable of guys. However, instead of reproduction, he gained a different goal, and that was just to spread humanity in a world where that's lost. I think this movie perfectly embodies how so many people just go on through their day-to-day lives without thinking about one another, all in the pursuit of money or materialistic things. And if you agree with any of my thoughts, then let me know below. And if you disagree and you interpreted the movie in any other way, please let me know. Junkhead was originally a short film. However, the reception for it was so good that 4 years later after the short film's release, Takehide Hori released a full-length film in 2017. Now, I mentioned it earlier, but Takehide Hori was the main guy behind the whole movie. I mean, just look at the credits. Big shout out to everyone else who worked on the project. But it's not surprising why this movie took 7 years, and that includes the time with the short film, to get produced. Now I need you to understand how talented this guy is. He created this soundtrack for this movie. I'm not the biggest electro or dubstep fan, but the music was really good. Not only did it match the aesthetic that the movie looked like, but it was entertaining. And usually with dubstep, I'm not that entertained by that.
Be so serious.
Junkhead was not only received well by audiences, but it was nominated for Best Animated Feature in 2021 at the Fantasia Film Festival. It also won that award in 2017. He also won an Audience Award in 2021 at the New York Asian Film Festival. I've said this a lot, but one more time, I can't recommend this film enough. And if my review at any point intrigued you, I highly suggest watching this movie. It is well worth the hour and a half and some change out of your day. The movie itself is linked below, and same with my sources. I really only used IMDb, but still, if you want to go check it out, it's going to be down there. If you enjoyed the review at any part, then leaving a like really helps me out. And if you think I earned it, then, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you leave. Alright, with all that being said, I'll see you next week. Bye.